following is a presentation of Learfield IMG College. From the Georgia Southern Sports Network, powered by Learfield IMG College.
Wings up, Eagle Nation! Touchdown, Georgia Southern!
This is Inside Eagle Nation, your all-access look into Eagle athletics.
Taking a look through all the other action in Georgia Southern athletics this past week. A lot of road action. A lot of teams hitting the old I-16 out of town.
Getting on the steel horse and taking us to parts north, south, west, wherever. Can't really go too much farther east.
Now let's return to the Learfield IMG College studios. Here are your hosts, Colin Lacy and Danny Reed.
That's a fact, Jack.
Into another edition of Inside Eagle Nation, your all-access look inside Georgia Southern athletics as we get set to wrap this one up. This is the one that we love doing these podcasts, but this is probably the least favorite that we have to do. But we wrap up what the 2021-2022 athletic calendar looked like for Georgia Southern football, baseball, basketball, all sports in between. Because with Georgia Southern falling to the Texas Tech Red Raiders yesterday, the athletic calendar has concluded. Now it's time to turn the attention to starting up back in August. But this is one that is a little bit different. We're going to talk about all of the sports throughout Georgia Southern athletics, and it's probably going to bleed into the next couple editions of Inside Eagle Nation because we keep this going all throughout the summer. We don't stop. This keeps going because, well, we would get bored. But at the end of the day, there's still a lot to talk about, especially now in the life of Georgia Southern athletics. A lot to talk about and a lot to be excited about. But it's a special edition, kinda special edition, as we wrap up the athletic calendar year. We want your input. Comment, text us, tweet us, either questions you have about anything. Comment, text us, tweet us your favorite memories over the last athletic calendar year. Anything. Send it to us. Facebook Live at gseagles.com. If you have the secret text line, I think that's still alive.
It is still alive.
But we dive into what this week has been. It has been a crazy week, to say the very least. The Statesboro Regional not only went off, but a very successful regional, and not necessarily wins and losses wise for Georgia Southern, but a very successful regional this week hosted at J.I. Clement Stadium.
Going back and listening to Rodney's comments from the press conference after the loss to Texas Tech yesterday, I mean, he echoed a lot of what we talked about on the broadcast about how many people and how many hours and how much sweat equity it took to pull this off. But the ability of so many people doing odd jobs and going beyond the scope of their positions. You've got women's soccer serving as a backup grounds crew. You've got volleyball and the entire staff doing painting. You've got Jared painting every which way. You've got everybody pitching in, wanting this to be a success. And like Rodney mentioned in his closing comments, you got momentum.
Yeah.
The baseball program absolutely has momentum going into 2023, but this whole athletic department does. And that's why I think that even though there are a number of programs that had a lot of success this year, this athletic season may go down as one of the most important that we've ever had.
Yeah.
Because of what is about to begin in force, the changes that have been made, some of the things that have already happened, but we're going to sit here and forecast what is still going to happen within the next few months and years.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of balls that have been started rolling over the last 10 months since the athletic calendar turned to this one. And you look at what it started with and what it ended with. There's been a lot that's happened over the last 10, 11 months since we started focusing on the 21-22 athletic calendar year. And there's a lot of things that if you would have told us this time last year when we were wrapping up last year's athletic calendar, I don't know that you would have been believing a whole lot of it. You would have said that Georgia Southern baseball was going to be hosting its first ever regional. The success that Georgia Southern basketball had, Clay Helton being the head coach for Georgia Southern football, indoor practice facility having the groundbreaking, the Convocation Center having the groundbreaking. There's a lot that's gone on. 3 different teams going to NCAA postseason in the spring. That's never happened in Georgia Southern athletics. There's a lot that's happened this year that is pretty eye-opening, not just here in Statesboro, but across the Sun Belt and across the college athletics landscape.
You know, a year ago, we were just removed from COVID, and I remember how exhausting that year was. Physically, mentally, emotionally, in every respect, just how exhausting it was. And, of course, it ended with a Sun Belt championship loss to South Alabama. You knew that you weren't going to the regional without a victory in that game. But to see what happened over those next few months, how there was a leadership change atop Georgia Southern football, how Kevin Whitley kept things together for the final 8 weeks of the season, how we were gifted with the hire of Clay Helton with 4 weeks left in the season, to have the opportunity to survey, to review, to evaluate, to recruit every county in this state, to still pick up some important memories along the way. That's just a small little snapshot of how everybody else has realized that it's time to push the chips to the middle. Convocation Center, IPF. You could even throw the impending construction of the Tormenta Stadium. There is so much that is going to force this little town in southeast Georgia that's 13 miles off of I-16. It's not going to be a hidden gem anymore. It's just not. People are going to recognize Statesboro. They're not going to say, well, what's Georgia Southern? Where's Statesboro? People are going to know very quickly because of how much enthusiasm and positivity has been infused in a short amount of time, and with everybody stepping up in a number of different ways. 22-23, that I think you're going to see as one of the most successful years overall that athletic department has ever seen.
We'll dive into the specifics for Georgia Southern baseball in the 2022 Statesboro Regional. Was supposed to start on Friday night against UNCG, but because of a just shy of 6-hour rain delay in the Notre Dame-Texas Tech game, Georgia Southern baseball got moved to Saturday morning. Ended up being right around a 10 o'clock first pitch for Georgia Southern and UNCG. And a really good game. Georgia Southern started in the first and second innings with a run apiece, then a big 4-run outburst in the bottom half of the 5th inning, 2 more in the 7th. But the name of the game in this one was Ty Fisher, a complete game shutout. 4 hits over his 9 innings, just 1 walk, 6 strikeouts on 114 pitches. And we talked about it with Coach Hendon later on that afternoon, and you and I brought it up on the broadcast. It made you think of Sam Howard so much, whose parents were in attendance for the first ever Statesboro Regional. So similar to what it was when Sam went down to Tallahassee and did what he did against Florida State.
It's cool to tell the story that Sam did it in the home of the number 5 national seed, but Ty did it here.
Right.
He did it here. The first ever postseason NCAA regional home game. Look, I know it's supposed to be a neutral site and all that jazz, but Eagle Nation showed up big time for a 10 a.m. first pitch, and I'd like to say that the game was over when he struck out the side in the first inning, but there were still 8 more innings after that. The Eagles, though, got him 8 runs. The big flood of offense batting around again in the 5th inning, which they've done so much over the last month of the regular season. But Ty goes 17 up, 17 down. Didn't give up a hit until 1 out in the 7th inning, and even that was an infield single that Austin Thompson just about took away with a terrific diving play to the right. And how good was he this entire year to play that position and commit 5 errors over the course of 61 games. To end on a double play, though, and to get the reaction – not just at game's end, but as soon as Ty stepped back onto the field for the 9th, the savvy of the fans to know that he was given that chance, but what he was about to do. They were on it. That you could feel like, okay, this is it. He's going to give him this chance to do this because he earned the chance to do this.
There was a couple of different spots throughout that game that were just cool moments in the sense of after the first out is recorded in the 7th, you get that infield single from Press Kavanaugh that you talked about. Everybody knew that broke up the no-hitter. The entire stadium got to their feet and applauded Ty Fisher.
The funny part, the Greensboro fans were happy about the hit, but then okay, we got to applaud because that broke up the no-no in a regional. That's pretty unreal.
It was a special moment. And then you talk about he stepping back onto the field in the 9th inning, had over 100 pitches as he went back into the 9th inning, but only needed 10 to record 114 overall. And to be able to have the savvy like you talk about, and Coach Hennon mentioned it, this is a town with really good baseball fans. I know we talk about a couple of different spots that we go to around the Sun Belt Conference, Louisiana. I think of when Seth Schumann came out against Louisiana a number of years ago to a standing ovation of Cajun fans. It's the same deal here in Statesboro. You've got the baseball fan, the baseball know-how to be able to acknowledge what's going on, which doesn't happen everywhere.
And a lot of our conversations about the atmosphere, it has to do when Georgia comes to town, or when Georgia Tech comes to town, or this year when the crowd was huge for the World Series trophy, when you had C of C for the midweek game, and then back to the 2017 conference tournament. But you had the moment. You had the Baldwin Grand Slam. You had the Cleveland home run against Texas State. You had the Cleveland home run in the finals against South Alabama. It's proof that this place can be packed on a game-by-game basis. It shouldn't take an NCAA regional to do that, and my guess is now that the momentum has been created, you're going to see that improve even more. But look at the attendance figures for this year. You set an average attendance record by more than 200 fans, better than 1,800 per game were here. And if you factor in the contest that took place over 3 days for the regional, it's the most fans that have ever come to J.I. Clements in one season, bettering the numbers from 2010. So now it's, where do you go from here? Next step was taken. We told people that all year on our pregame intro, had to take that next step. Next step is taken to get back to a regional, but to host. But with Rodney Hennon and crew and a good core coming back, I know a lot of fifth-year guys are gone, and I hate to see the careers of Swan and Avant and AT and all those guys be ended, but you've got a lot to be happy that's coming back with Ledford and Dowdell maybe in the middle of the order, but all the pitching that's coming back with your weekend rotation of Fisher, with Payton, Ben Johnson. Jay Thompson can fill a number of different roles. He'll come back for his final season. I'm really excited to see what the Diamond Eagles do next year, too.
Move on to the second game of the day. It was the nightcap in the winner's bracket game. Georgia Southern advancing after the 8-0 victory over UNCG. Then it would be on to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And you and I talked about it on Friday because you had Notre Dame and Texas Tech on the field playing. You had a number of different things around the game. You look at a guy that was on the plate for the umpiring crew, Jake Uhlenhop, has called a Major League Baseball game. And you and I just kind of sat back and were like, we're sitting here in June at JI watching a regional between Texas Tech and Notre Dame with an umpire that's been in Major League Baseball. What is happening right now?
And you're watching two Power 5 teams play. That's the student alt-rock band opening up for AC/DC.
Right.
that was crazy to me.
It was
crazy.
Awesome. But you had Georgia Southern and Notre Dame going at it on Saturday night. Ended up being a little bit after 8 after a rain delay. Again.
Southeast Georgia in June.
Abracadabra. It was a 6-4 win for Notre Dame, but a really good college baseball game. Georgia Southern got out first in the top half of the third inning on a Noah Ledford blast that if I didn't see it floating in the pond, I wouldn't believe it had landed yet.
I walked behind the Blue Monster earlier today just to see how far the pond stretched to where the ball went over, and I can only imagine how far back in the pond that actually landed, because that, to use a really bad Eagle pun, that ball soared. And the reaction from the fans as the ball was going out was that's chill bump city. It really was.
But a 1-0 lead for Georgia Southern through 3. Notre Dame would get 2 in the bottom half of the 4th inning. You get scoreless until the 6th inning. Georgia Southern scores 3 in the top of the 6th to make it a 4-2 lead. Notre Dame gets those 2 back in the bottom half of the 6th to tie it up at 4, then 2 more in the bottom of the 7th. This was a really good college baseball game, and we've talked about it so many times this year that Georgia Southern has been through some battles, as Coach Hennon talks about. This is a game that those games prepare you for.
And it was in front of the biggest crowd in ballpark history.
Right.
More than 3,500 were there, had a chance to see it. We talk about those moments that you take a mental picture of. The first mound visit in the first inning where it seemed like everybody stood up at the same time. Whoa, this is real now. we're in the middle of this bubbling cauldron that we got here just off of Fair Road, and then the Blancato single that ties the game with 2 outs. Holmgren with bases loaded. He goes to right field to drive in 2 more. You're up 4-2 against the best team in the ACC over the last 3 aggregate seasons, but they did show why they're the best team in the ACC over the last 3 aggregate seasons, with the home run to tie the game, the 2 runs with the bases loaded when Jalen Payton came in out of the bullpen. But the Eagles, they set themselves up to have a chance. They never felt like they were out of a game. It didn't matter who the opponent was. It didn't matter where the game was. Just didn't get that big hit like they did earlier in the game.
Again, a 6-4 victory for Notre Dame. Jack Finley would come in to close it out for Notre Dame, and he was really good over the last couple of days of this Statesboro Regional. He is going to be somebody that's going to be really impressive to watch the next couple of years just as a freshman in that Notre Dame program. But that would force Georgia Southern to the 2 o'clock game on Sunday, needing to beat Texas Tech to get to the regional finals against the Fighting Irish. Georgia Southern falls to the Texas Tech Red Raiders, a 3-1 victory for Texas Tech. But this is one got announced the night before that Danny Madden was going to be pitching for Georgia Southern, and you know he's had his struggles in the starting rotation, was really good out of the bullpen, and he carried that into the first 3 innings. He was pretty dominant against Texas Tech.
He threw like it was his last game.
Yeah.
The fastball command was outstanding because they had a number of aggressive righties. He could throw that changeup. He worked in his curveball where he could. 4th inning, he lost the command a little bit with a couple of singles and then the back-to-back walks to force in a run, and you knew that you were probably going to be giving up the lead, and there was going to be a crooked number on the board. It was only 3, but Texas Tech pitched really well despite giving up 7 hits. Georgia Southern's trio of pitchers with Madden, then Jay Thompson, and then Jake Martin only gave up 4 hits, and one of those was an infield single. They didn't get a hit until the 4th inning. Eagles had their chances, and you cannot convince me that everybody in that ballpark did not think that Parker Beatier's fly ball in the 8th inning wasn't gone.
Oh, for sure.
Any other day, that is probably out. You're up 4-3, and we get another moment. But instead, Dylan Carter makes a terrific catch, one of a number of really good defensive plays Texas Tech made. Morrell in the diving play on Blancado's ball earlier. I think he would have had a triple if that ball's not caught. I mean, they've been in the last 3 super regionals up until this year, so they're battle-tested. The program has gotten itself to a point where they're made for these kind of games. But even though Georgia Southern didn't get the victory, they proved that they belong with Notre Dame, with Texas Tech. They're in the room, even though they just didn't get the victory.
And you're going up against a guy in Andrew Morris who has been the number 1 for Texas Tech the majority of the year on the mound, ahead of Birdsell, who is the Big 12 pitcher of the year. Yeah. Now, Morris was really good the first 85% of the season, but he goes 6 innings and 1-run ball, and he was really good over 96 pitches. But you're only in that situation if you're Texas Tech because of the 6-hour rain delay on Friday. He started the game, only goes a third of the inning against Notre Dame, only 18 pitches, I think it was. Yeah. Then he's able to come back for that Sunday because you had that rain delay. And you and I were talking about it, that both Tim Tadlock for Texas Tech and Link Jarrett were probably thinking, man, a 6-hour rain delay in the first inning, that's not right. But then Morris comes back against Georgia Southern. You get John Michael Bertrand to come back against Texas Tech, who was really good in the regional final on Sunday night.
We saw a glimpse of it when he threw his inning against Texas Tech. He got out of that bases-loaded jam, but only 1 run over 7 2/3. We mentioned that he's a Georgia guy, went to Blessed Trinity. He began his career at Furman before they discontinued their program, but that had to be even more special for him as he was named the regional's most outstanding player.
But again, a 3-1 victory for Texas Tech over Georgia Southern, and we talk about moments that you kind of sit back and just let it soak in a lot. And one of those tweeted out a picture after the game being on the field, and the announced attendance was 2,100. You can make that what you want.
If it was twice that, I still don't know if I believe you, but it's...
yeah. But I know that place was packed, and to have the entire team come out of the dugout, look up to the crowd, the crowd's a standing ovation for this team. The team tips their hat to the crowd. And to be on the field looking back at the crowd, that was one of the coolest things I think I've ever done.
Yeah, if we get some visitors in our booth starting next year, you might see that picture somewhere on a wall in our booth, because that's a really good shot, a really touching shot, and it sums up just how much this town and this fan base embraced this team because of how they played. Rodney has told us about that, this gutty effort, how determined they were, how this team fought harder than any other team that he's ever coached, and that says a lot for somebody that's been in it for as long as Skip has. But when they came back out of the dugout, we were about to take our break for the Ford Clubhouse report, but as soon as they all came back out and the crowd just exploded, that's one that we just had to just be there for, just see, just be able to feel it. And then they didn't want to leave the field. It took a little bit longer for them to have their post-game huddle, because it's an extension of just how much they enjoyed being around each other. They were on the field, but they were so close off the field. They would get to the Wiggins building just to hang out. They would watch TV, whether it was golf tournaments or other games or whatever else was on the tube, and just hang out in the locker room, hang out in the clubhouse, just be around each other. There was a lot of love in that building this year, and that's part of the reason why they had the season that they did. You can look back and say, well, they should have won 45 games, folks. They just went 41-20 and hosted a regional for the first time ever. I don't think that's the time to nitpick. I really don't.
This was a special group. We've talked about it all year long, but you were telling me a story, and I think you said you were going to tell it today anyway, and I hope you did, because I'm going to make you tell it anyway.
Oh, well, okay.
But after the game, you go to talk to Coach Hennon for a little while, and you were talking about this team, and he likened it to another.
He was about to turn back into his office, and there's that little hallway that's right across, because his office is here, and pitching coach A.J. Batista is over here. He said, I've never had a group fight harder than this one, but I tell you what, I'd love to see them take on that group. And I mean, I knew what the picture was, but we both turned and looked at it, and it's the picture of the 2000 team right after they beat Furman for the SoCon Championship at Riley Park that year. That's a well-chronicled team. They had just 19 guys by the end of the year due to a number of injuries and a number of other things that had happened. They had 6 pitchers. 6 total. When you think about what Brett Lewis did, what David Ray did, Matt Easterday had one of the top offensive seasons in the history of this program. I said, okay, if they played each other, it would have to be a 3-game series. You couldn't just watch them play one game together. He got a big kick out of that, but just to, in a way, it brings it full circle, because that was his first team.
Yeah.
That was his first team. He was at Western, got hired in the summer of '99. That's how he began. To see it 23 years later, finally get a regional here. I've said it a lot. Rodney's my favorite coach I've ever covered in any sport, in any place. And I've said this a lot. He's the perfect guy for this place. He's the perfect guy for that program. And I'm so happy that they got a chance to do what they did this year because of how good of a man he is. Not how good of a baseball man he is, which we know, but how good of a man Ten is.
And we've talked about building not just teams, but a program. And I think this year kind of embodies all of that. You got to see this program get elevated to the next level, hosting a regional for the first time. The fact that the entire athletic department in some way, shape, or form had a hand in this regional. We've mentioned it. Chris Adams and the women's soccer staff helping rebuild the mound. The volleyball staff, Chad Willis, Taylor out there painting on Tuesday and Wednesday. Sean McCaffrey from tennis out there doing anything that he could possibly help with. So many different people had a hand in this, but it speaks to the culture and the just family atmosphere that's around athletics, and you got to see that kind of front and full circle this weekend.
And the good thing is now you don't have to put in a bid to host a regional again, since this was the first time that's ever been put in.
I think Eric Reisner's pretty happy about that.
The paperwork is in. What we could do, we could do. Now, we know there are some improvements that are going to be coming to both baseball and softball over the next couple of years, so we'll keep an eye on all of that, and we'll update you as soon as that information becomes available. But now that information has been given to the NCAA and it's been hosted, we got some pretty glowing remarks. Site rep Kirk Mason was really good to work with. I appreciate how by the book he was, because for the first one, it needs to be very specific and you need to do things the right way. You also had Jim Jackson, longtime umpire, sat down with him at the welcome dinner on Thursday. He told story after story, and I hope he gets a chance to come back here, because I would listen to his stories.
Oh, don't be surprised if he's on an edition of Inside Eagle Nation before too long.
That would be a treat. But you have to be able to do it for the first time before you can say it's a regular thing and it's common to be part of this, even though Georgia Southern didn't win it. We're going to look back months and years down the line and realize just how special this was. And look, I wasn't here for the 14 Sun Belt Championship in football. You feel how good it is while it's happening, but it's the months and years that pass when you reflect on it, how special it becomes. Beating Florida in 13, the baseball victories over Georgia and Georgia Tech, for basketball, beating Wake Forest, things like that. It's the months and years down the line. Sometimes the stories change. Sometimes things get added, but it helps the story. It's all about the story. It makes it more fun. But to be here for that, you can't understand what it means to the people in this department, to us to be able to call it, and for everyone to work so hard and put so much in to make it a success.
We dive back into what this year has shown us, has given us, and has let us be a part of. And again, we'll take your questions on Facebook Live. You can tweet us at GS Sports Network as well. Share your favorite memories. We will share our glimpse into those memories as well. But let us know what you are going to look back on this athletic year and think of for most of it. And you look back at football, and the first thing that stands out, and we just got done talking about how everybody had a part in the Statesboro Regional. You think of the welcome party, the introductory press conference, the whole event around Clay Helton being introduced as the head football coach for Georgia Southern, and doing it at a time where you're still having a season.
Yeah.
That was a cool moment to be able to be a part of that press conference as well.
Look, on the field, nobody is going to try to sugarcoat it. 3-9 is 3-9. It was not a good season. There were some good things that happened. Texas State victory on the road with Derwin Burgess going crazy, both on offense and on special teams. I think he's going to be a big part of what this new look offense under Brian Ellis does starting this fall. You look for ways that you can create momentum. And we've discussed that a number of ways that baseball just pulled that off, not just with this past weekend, but winning 41 games and being eligible to get a top 16 national seed, which they're one of only 3 conference teams that have hosted a regional. Coastal did it in 18. Cajuns have done it 3 times, but to be a Sun Belt team that hosts a regional, that's a pretty big accomplishment. But for football, when you can bring in someone that has accomplished what Coach Helton has, with a Rose Bowl victory, being at one of the premier brands in all of college athletics, that USC, that carries weight. That carries a lot of weight, and they had a lot of success. He put a lot of players in the NFL in one of the most difficult media markets to have success. He had a measure of success, and I know at the end things didn't go as well as they would have wanted to. He's a Southeastern guy. I feel like this is a really good spot for him and the staff that he has put together. The strength and conditioning staff has worked wonders with a number of guys that have stuck around. Look, you're going to lose some in the translation. The transfer portal is there, NIL is there, and that's going to sometimes affect you in a negative way, but the hope is that it affects you more so in a positive way. But with the mentality that has been installed, toughness, discipline, united, that's the hallmark of his program. In a way, you wish September would get here so you could see Morgan State, but he mentioned this a number of times during the Eagle Clubs that we had a chance to go to during the month of April and May. You need time to let it happen. You want it to happen quickly, but you need time to install, to establish comfort. And then when that is there, you can go and play as hard as you want to. You can play with confidence when you understand how offense, defense, and special teams all fit together. And it may not be this year. We'll be honest. It may not be as early as this year. We'd love it to happen this year. You'd love to see Georgia Southern be in contention for a Sun Belt championship in our new look league, get back to a bowl game for the 5th time. But this is going to be an ongoing process. If everybody is committed to the process, if there's buy-in, if there's love on both sides, then this is going to be back more quickly than what it should be.
Again, football gets going September 3rd at Allen E. Paulson Stadium against Morgan State on the Night of Champions. But there's a lot that you have already seen take place. I think of a lot of the staff that Coach Helton has brought in, and not just on-field staff, but support staff as well. And you saw that come together probably quicker than a lot of people thought throughout spring football. It culminated in the spring game a couple of weeks ago. But there's already a measure of difference that you've seen already on this field.
It takes that time for the buy-in, but when you go about it the right way, when you are intentional with your actions, when you're genuine with your actions, and that's what really helped Coach Lunsford at the beginning. That's why they were able to get to 10 victories in 2018, and that's why they were able to go to 3 straight bowl games. But the way that things have come together, bringing in Brian Ellis, bringing in Will Harris, who I think is going to do a phenomenal job running a defense for the first time. Rip Rowan, as the D-line coach, is going to become a fan favorite. He seems like he fits Georgia Southern like a shoe. I think that that's going to be an awesome thing, having Turner West here, somebody with NFL experience to come in, work exclusively as a special teams coach, the way that the off-field staff has come together, the support staff, athletic training, the way it has all come together. I know we weren't there for the spring game because we were in Mobile for the baseball series against South Alabama. It seemed like it was a big success. The EFA reverse raffle was the biggest event that they've ever had, and that's going to continue to grow. Football is going to continue to grow with the IPF. The construction is going to begin in great detail this summer. That's why half the parking lot is going to be fenced off, and it's going to create a different tailgating atmosphere for 2022. But this is usually the saddest edition that we do because we're coming off the loss to end of baseball season. I've never been more enthusiastic and encouraged going into a summer because of what's about to come, but what we've already accomplished, because I think it's just going to get that much bigger and better.
Look back for what basketball showed Georgia Southern this year. Ended up being a season that's a 13-16 record, 5-11 in Sun Belt play. But you look at a couple of really big wins this year for Brian Berg, 53-41 over South Florida in the second game of the year down in Tampa. And there's a couple of them that we've talked about, the sweep of the Louisiana schools down in Louisiana, ULM on Thursday and Louisiana that Saturday by 1. And we talked about it a lot during basketball season that it was so close to clicking for Brian Berg and his staff, and you got to see the majority of it. But from what I saw from the outside looking in, it seemed like it was so close, and you hope that the offseason is what gets it to that click.
I think about Andre Saversoff, how he basically doubled his production from his first year in Statesboro. He's going to be in contention for all conference this year. I think he's going to be one of the better players in the Sun Belt. I know you lose McCadden to the portal. He goes to Memphis. Getty Usapitis goes to Maine, and it's going to be a relatively new-look team, but it's clear that the defensive identity clicked, because those guys grinded teams into a pulp on defense. I think you're going to see an enhanced commitment to offense, because if the team could have scored a little bit, you're looking at a team that would have threatened 20 wins, and some people are going to probably say I'm nuts, but I sat there, I watched every practice, I watched every game. You can say 13 wins wasn't that good, but the defense was. The defense was consistent. At times it was elite, holding teams to under 40% shooting for much of the year. And there was a 5-game stretch where they were leading the country over a 5-game stretch for field goal percentage defense. That's extremely tough to do when now you've got more than 360 Division I teams. If the offense gets to where they want it, year 3 is typically the big year. Year 3 for Brian Berg and staff, just be ready. I'm just telling you, just be ready.
Women's basketball saw a pretty historic year, 18-10 overall, 8-6 in Sun Belt Conference play, and it started with a 68-66 victory at Auburn to knock off the Auburn Tigers.
My man.
Yeah. Me and Chad had fun that night.
Was it a block, a steal? What was it?
I don't know. You have to ask Chad on that one. But it was a team that won more games than they have since the early 2000s. You lose a couple of assistants off this team. You've got Chris Draker going out to San Jose State. Tia Lewis making her way up to Atlanta. Really appreciate what they did for Georgia Southern. Deontay McChester just got named the associate head coach for Georgia Southern women's basketball. I believe it was this past week. Days start to run together at this point. But really appreciate what that staff did, and you hope it's on the up and up for Georgia Southern women's basketball, and it certainly seems to be pointing in that direction.
You don't like losing people, but at the same time, it's a compliment because of the kind of people you're bringing in.
Yeah.
If other people want them, well, you must be doing something right.
Right. We've talked about what Georgia Southern baseball ended with, but taking a step back over the last 24 hours or so, 41-20, the overall record, and you look at that after this team started 2-5. You got beat 33-3 at Tennessee, who was number 19 at the time, but for 95% of the season had been number 1 on everybody's poll.
Now they're going to the Supers to host Notre Dame. Yeah. Because this region was paired with Knoxville.
Yeah, go Irish. But you think of how this season started, and then the stretch that Georgia Southern got on after that, and while a 13-7 win at Jacksonville doesn't seem like a whole heck of a lot at the time, that started to get everything right for Georgia Southern.
Georgia Tech, the 3 one-run wins over Miami, Ohio, 2 of those by walk-off. Jason Swan giving the Eagles their first walk-off home run since 14. Back-to-back walk-off wins hadn't happened since 2012 in a doubleheader against Radford. And then the things, they just kind of started to happen. The comebacks. My God, all those comebacks. 25 comeback wins. By our research, it was the most in the country. Find a Way started off as a small thing that just came up in a pregame interview with Rodney before one of the Arkansas State games. It became a T-shirt. It became a hashtag. It became a mantra throughout this program, and so many of the fans, thank you guys for latching onto that as well. But it just kept happening more and more, taking 2 out of 3 at Texas State. Georgia Southern hadn't taken a series out of top 10 teams since 1979, sweeping Georgia State here. Always enjoyed doing that, especially when you come back from 6-0 down in Game 3 after a 3-hour rain delay. We had to sit there and wait through that. It was worth it. And I remember after that series, because it was leading into Easter, typically we take care of our post-game stuff, hold up shop, go home. I think you and I sat up in that press box for an hour and a half that night just looking at each other. We really got something here.
Yeah.
This was really going to be something special because Georgia State was cooking when they came to Statesboro. They were 10-2 at conference. They had just beaten Georgia Tech convincingly in Atlanta earlier that week. But to pull off what the Eagles did, especially after that final game, and that was the point where we realized that it didn't matter what the deficit was. There weren't very many of them the rest of the year. But whatever the deficit was, this team was going to find a way to come back.
You brought up a note on the broadcast. Coach Hennon brought it up as well in the post-game press conference. After the Sunday game at Louisiana, Georgia Southern did not lose a game the rest of the year by more than 2 runs.
Nuts.
That is unreal. And Coach Hennon said it too. There weren't a whole lot of losses after that point either. But the ones that were not more than 2 runs. That is unreal.
You just think at some point somebody's going to pick you off. Somebody is going to have a night.
Right. In the game of baseball, it's going to happen. You're going to get shelled one night. It's just going to happen. Good thing is you get to bounce back and do it again tomorrow. But it didn't happen.
The pitching kept improving as the year went on. You only had really one consistent starter in Ty Fisher, and he saved his best for last. Thankfully, he did. Jalen Payton was one of the toughest in the league to hit, but we knew he had some command issues. The walks were a little bit up there. I know that's going to be his focus going into the offseason. Encouraging signs from Ben Johnson, what he gave this team in that outing against Troy in the semifinals. We've talked so much about Jay Thompson. We feel like he's a member of this radio network family. But also with what Javon Ray did, picking up 7 wins out of the bullpen earlier on in the season, how Thomas Higgins developed, getting into the starting rotation, and I hate that it happened for Hayden Harris, that he didn't get to make his final start because of the injury in the bullpen before Notre Dame. But the Grand Canyon jump that he made from April on this year was one of the biggest in-season jumps I think I've ever seen a player make in one season.
And you look at guys that really took the next step in their progression. A guy like Jake Martin, who was a situational guy last year, he was a huge part of the success for Georgia Southern. Anthony DeMola, who redshirted last year, he used that redshirt season to really up his game to the next level. He comes in, he's a huge part of the success for Georgia Southern baseball, mainly out of the bullpen, but he made a couple of starts when he had to.
That's right.
But you look at so many guys that made a huge jump, and I think it speaks volumes to not only the buy-in and the commitment from the team, but the kind of people that you have on staff here at Georgia Southern. We've talked about Rodney Hennon a lot, but Alan Beck is the hitting coach, assistant head coach for Rodney Hennon. AJ Batista in his first year as a pitching coach. And those 3 are the ones that get a lot of the credit and a lot of the blame for whatever happens in a program, and rightfully so. Like, those are the ones, they signed up for that. But there are guys in this program that are on staff that nobody really sees, nobody really talks about, but had a huge impact on this program. We've talked about it a lot with Jeff Cordy coming in for his first season as the volunteer assistant, coaching first, and working with the catchers. He was a standout catcher at Illinois in his time, in his playing days. He is somebody that took that catching position has a passion for it, which I love. Everybody knows that. That's not a secret.
Well,
and so working with the catchers, you saw a distinct growth in that department. Working with the hitters as well. Doing anything everybody wanted him to do. At the end of the season, he was watering the field. He was throwing every ounce of early BP. If anybody wanted to come and get extra work in, Cordy was down there throwing. I promise you that.
Because of his efforts, two of the very, very major storylines this year were when J.P. Ty gets hurt against Miami, Ohio. Kyler Holtgren, the transfer from the College of Central Florida, ends up starting 16 straight games behind the plate, and he ends up being a factor the rest of the season. Even when J.P. came back, they still shared the position. Kyler had that grand slam for the go-ahead in Game 2 against Texas State. That was his first hit all year against a left-hander. That's one of the top moments of the entire season. But Sammy Blancato becomes a household name. He played in 28 games a year ago, made 6 starts. He was a here and there, late innings, get a shot where you can. And he played a little bit when Parker Beatier got hurt against Troy last year. Parker gets hurt again this year. Sammy comes in against Texas State. He lays down that bunt in the 10th inning. And you think, okay, but Beater's not able to play the next day. So this guy, this Sammy Blancato guy from Marietta and Kelhai, gets into the lineup. Big fly, 3-run shot. Next day, in the lineup, big fly, right field line. He just kept going and never stopped. He was 1 for 17 before that Texas State series. He hits the home run. He just didn't stop the rest of the way.
Yeah.
He became a fan favorite because of how he played. The running to first after hit by pitches and walks. Explaining that to people and then seeing their reaction when it actually happened. I mean, you weren't kidding. He actually does. He sprints to first base after things like this. Playing the game hard. He's a Georgia Southern baseball player.
Yeah.
And that's why people grew to love him very quickly.
Couple other guys that don't get a whole lot of love but deserve about as much love as anybody. Christian Bourne, Director of Operations and Player Development. He's somebody that is not too far removed from his playing days as a pitcher at JMU. Comes in as the Director of Operations, handles all the travel, handles all the day-to-day with this baseball program, does a fantastic job getting Georgia Southern not only from place to place, but getting them taken care of wherever they are, whether that be here in Statesboro or somewhere on the road, and had to deal with some interesting travel arrangements throughout the year, but Bourne did a fantastic job, and then he's got that pitching mind, so he's able to help a little bit with the pitching staff and some of those guys, and just a great, great individual. And then somebody else that we've known for a while, who comes on as a GA, Tyler Owens, fresh out of his standout years here at Georgia Southern on the mound. He becomes the bullpen coach, the GA, whatever you want to call him. He goes down to the bullpen, and we've said it many, many times, there is not anybody I would rather have in the bullpen behind somebody warming up than Tyler Owens.
It took a minute to get used to him not being the one in the bullpen warming up and being the one with the clipboard saying, okay, here's your scout. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to get ready. Ronnie says it all the time, T.O.'s T.O.
Yep.
He's the same guy every day, bedrock of consistency. That's why he was so good for the 3 years that Georgia Southern had him, and he was a pleasure to have on this staff.
Really good staff, really good people surrounding this program, and it takes a lot of people to make a successful program, just that, and there's a lot of really good people around this Georgia Southern baseball program, and it makes it an absolute joy to be around day in and day out.
And for us to be able to be around, the fact that they let us around as much as we are, because we know that in a lot of situations, they're not as fortunate. Yeah. Just to get to know these guys, but they also know that we're in it for the right reasons. They know we're there to do a job, but we've been able to establish relationships with these coaches. And Rodney's, I know the kind of relationship Rodney had with Ryan Chambers, and great to see him this week, and so happy he came back to be able to catch up with so many of the former players that also came back. Brian Pearson, Mike Economos, and Eric Alonso, among many, 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 many others that flooded the stadium this weekend. But working with him and Allen for the last 7 seasons, bringing in A.J. Battisto, and former Eagle who played here for 3 years, just to be able to pick their brains, share things that we can find, be able to just talk ball, and be around these players, because if there's one positive that comes out of COVID, it was the waiver year to get the 5th and 6th year guys.
Yeah.
You get more time with them. You get to be able to watch them develop, to become men, and to simply watch them play this game that they've been able to play for a lot of their lives. And for Avant, for AT, for Cersei, for Swan, for Harris, for Madden, for those guys that have been here for 5 years, and in the case of Danny, he missed 2 years of his career because of Tommy John surgery, this being his 4th stop in 6 years. But for those guys that we've watched, we've known, we've encouraged, it's just really, really cool to watch them turn into who they turn into.
No doubt about it. That's the part of the job that isn't on the job description, but that's the fun part of it, getting to know these guys, having the relationships with them, and it's people that you stay in touch with for a long, long time.
That's why they keep coming back.
Yeah.
That's why it is a family. That's why when you hear Swan, Avant, and everybody talk about, you feel like you're playing with brothers, you feel like you're with your family. That's why Mason and Steve came back so many times this year. That's why so many guys came back this weekend, and I just hope that that's going to keep being a regular thing, because it is a really, really special program.
We will wrap up this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation, but want to ask for some input from Eagle Nation throughout the summer. Again, we're going to be keeping Inside Eagle Nation going every Monday night, 6 o'clock, but let us know what you want to hear about, hear from, hear for, what you want to see, what you want us to do. The summer months are the ones where we can get a little creative.
And we've also got a lot of work to do and some planning for the year, because we've got some important anniversaries coming up, with the 40th anniversary of Georgia Southern football being in the NCAA, officially sanctioned in 82. You've got this coming baseball season will be the 50th anniversary of the first College World Series team in 73. So there's a lot of things that we'll be able to plan for and be able to flush out even more of those stories. But all the while, we'll tell the stories of what currently is going on. We'll update the progress of the IPF, the Convocation Center, and just where we are all headed as an athletic department, because Jared has set a tone, and I think that there's a lot of tickets that have been bought for that plane ride.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
But that'll wrap up this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. It's been a crazy week, but a blast to be a part of the Statesboro Regional, the first ever regional in Georgia Southern athletics. But that'll wrap up this week's edition for Inside Eagle Nation. Until next week, for the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed, this is Colin Lacy saying so long, everybody.
You've been listening to Inside Eagle Nation, powered by Learfield, the official podcast of Georgia Southern Athletics.